Today, we open a story that sounds simple, but it has the power to disturb the comfortable and to comfort the suffering. Stay with me to the end, because this message is not only about the afterlife. It is about the life you are living right now, and the mercy you still have time to choose. Inside his home, there was music, warm bread, roasted meat, sweet fruit, and cups that never seemed too empty. He could smell the food when the gate opened. He could hear laughter spill out for a moment before the gate closed again. He did not want the feast. He wanted crumbs. He wanted what fell without anyone caring. And here is the wound of the story. The rich man saw him, just passing by, just stepping over the threshold as if the suffering at his feet belonged to another world. Sometimes comfort teaches us to look away. But the gate is not only wood and iron. The gate is the distance between seeing pain and responding to it. The city woke up each morning as if tomorrow was guaranteed. Sandals brushed stone. Merchants called out their wares. Carts rolled by. People greeted each other while the sun climbed higher. In the middle of that city stood the rich man's house, large and secure, with tall gates that opened inward and separated the inside from everything else. Beyond those gates, the air felt calmer. Servants moved with practiced ease. Soft music drifted through the corridors. Food arrived in abundance, as if hunger was a stranger that did not know the address. The table was set long before the rich man entered the room. It stretched wider than it needed to, and it carried more than anyone could eat. There was always plenty. Plenty for guests. Plenty for celebration. Plenty for the next day, too, because he believed the next day would always come. He wore fine linen and lived as if life was supposed to feel this way. His life was polished, predictable, protected. From where he sat, the messy parts of the world felt far away. Problems belonged outside. Pain belonged outside. Need belonged outside. Inside, everything was arranged to keep peace undisturbed. Curtains softened the sunlight. Doors closed quietly. Music covered awkward silence. And the rich man learned to call that peace a good life. He did not think of himself as evil. He never planned to hurt anyone. He would have said he was simply living well. He would have said he earned it. He would have said the world is full of trouble, and everyone must handle their own burdens. And that is how indifference often speaks. Not with loud cruelty, but with calm excuses. While he lived inside comfort, he became less aware of what comfort was doing to him. It was shaping him. It was training him. It was teaching him to measure the world by his own ease. And because nothing inside his walls demanded urgency, he stopped looking for urgency at all. This is how the story prepares the heart for the warning. Because the rich man did not fall into destruction through one dramatic sin. He drifted there through a life that never required him to love sacrificially. He drifted there through routines that never forced him to stop. He drifted there because the gate made it easy to separate his comfort from someone else's suffering. And every time that gate opened, he had a chance to notice, a chance to ask a name, a chance to offer something small that could have meant everything. But the gate closed again and again, and so did his heart. Just outside the gate lay Lazarus. He was not an idea. He was not a lesson. He was not a distant cause. He was a human being, and Jesus gave him a name so we would never reduce him to a symbol. Lazarus lay close enough to be seen, close enough that no one could honestly say they did not know. But he was also far enough for people to pretend the problem was not theirs. His body was worn down by hunger and illness. Sores covered his skin, painful and slow to heal. He had no strength left to stand. His voice was not loud enough to reach the dining room. His hope was not bold enough to demand attention. He chose that spot because it was the only place where kindness passed by. He chose that spot because the gate was where crumbs might fall. When the gate opened, Lazarus could smell fresh bread and roasted meat. He could hear laughter for a moment, Then the gate would close again. Inside, music. Outside, silence. Lazarus did not dream of luxury. He only hoped for what others would not miss. Scraps swept away without thought. Dogs wandered near him and licked his sores. Not because they understood mercy, but because they were the only ones who came close. No hands cleaned his wounds. No one offered water. No one spoke his name. No one asked how long he had been there. Lazarus became a quiet witness to the world's separation. One man surrounded by abundance, another surrounded by need. People passed by. Some stepped around him. Some looked down and quickly looked away, and the rich man passed by too. He walked through that gate often. Lazarus saw him. The rich man saw Lazarus. And the story does not accuse the rich man of striking Lazarus or cursing him. The story accuses him of something more common and more dangerous. The story accuses him of refusing to cross the short distance between them. Lazarus learned the rhythm of the house by sound. He knew when the meals began. He knew when the music rose. He knew when the gate opened. Each opening brought a small hope. Each closing returned him to waiting. And still, Lazarus remained there, not because he believed help was guaranteed, but because something in him refused to disappear completely. He was visible. He was in plain sight. And he was ignored. That is the tragedy of the gate. It does not always block the eyes. It blocks the heart. And a blocked heart can stand inches from suffering and still act as if nothing is there. Days passed, and nothing seemed to change. The sun rose. The city moved. The rich man's table filled again. Servants carried plates in and out. Music returned. Guests laughed. And outside the gate, Lazarus was still there. His body weaker. His wounds still open. His hunger still constant. Time did not remove Lazarus. Time only made him easier to ignore. Pain that is seen often enough and unanswered becomes familiar. Familiar pain becomes background. And when suffering becomes background, the heart becomes numb without realizing it. The rich man saw Lazarus every day. He could not miss him. Lazarus was part of the entrance, close enough to notice, distant enough to dismiss. And the rich man said nothing. He did not order anyone to remove Lazarus. He did not order anyone to help him. He simply continued his life as if silence was neutral, as if passing by was the same as being innocent. Inside, plates overflowed. Outside, hunger remained. Inside, laughter rose. Outside, Lazarus waited. The distance between them was not measured in miles. It was measured in mercy. And this is the part of the story that feels uncomfortably close, because many of us are not cruel people. We do not wake up planning to hurt anyone. We do not consider ourselves heartless. Yet we may still live behind gates, not always with wealth, but with boundaries that protect our routines. We may still pass a Lazarus in our own world, someone whose struggle is near enough to see, but inconvenient enough to avoid. The rich man likely told himself the same things we tell ourselves. Someone else will help. I do not know what to do. I am busy. I will do something later. Later is the word that makes indifference feel reasonable. Later is the word that makes the heart quiet its own conscience. But the story keeps repeating the same picture. The rich man moves in and out. The gate opens and closes. Lazarus remains. And each day becomes a testimony, not just to Lazarus's suffering, but to the rich man's choice. The gate becomes more than an object. It becomes a line drawn daily between comfort and compassion, between seeing and acting, between what we know is right and what we actually do. And now Jesus brings the story to the moment we all forget is coming. Not because we love thinking about it, but because we need to remember it. Death comes, not announced, not delayed, not impressed by gates, wealth, or plans. Death arrives like a door that closes one final time. And once that door closes, the decisions of life do not vanish. They follow us. They speak. They stand before God with full clarity. Then both men died. Lazarus died first, quietly, without a crowd, without honor, without family to hold his hand. He stopped breathing where he had been waiting so long. His suffering ended in a place the world considered unimportant, but heaven did not consider him unimportant. As his breath faded, the weight that pressed on him lifted. The pain that had followed him loosened its grip. Lazarus was carried, not dragged, not hurried, but gently lifted. Angels bore him away. The man who had been unwanted was received. The man who had been ignored was welcomed. Lazarus came to rest with Abraham, a picture of comfort, belonging, and peace. For the first time, there was no hunger, no sores, no waiting. Only the calm of being held by God's promise. Not long after, the rich man also died. His death was noticed. People gathered. His body was prepared. He was honored. He was buried. And the gates of his house closed behind him for the last time. Then he opened his eyes, and everything he trusted was gone. He found himself in torment, surrounded by anguish. There were no walls to protect him, no servants to answer, no table to ease his need. For the first time, he felt thirst that could not be satisfied, need that could not be ignored. And in that place, he lifted his eyes and saw far away Abraham, and beside Abraham, he saw Lazarus. He recognized him, the man at the gate, the one he stepped past day after day, the one he never spoke to, the one whose suffering he treated as background. And now Lazarus could not be dismissed. Lazarus was whole. Lazarus was comforted. Lazarus was honored. The rich man cried out for mercy. He asked that Lazarus would dip the tip of his finger in water and cool his tongue. It is a stunning reversal. The rich man who never gave Lazarus a crumb now begged for a drop. And Abraham answered with a truth that cuts through every excuse. In your lifetime you received good things, and Lazarus received hardship. Now he is comforted, and you are in anguish. The story is not saying wealth itself is the crime. The story is exposing what wealth can do when it trains the heart to ignore love. And then Abraham spoke about a great chasm, fixed and unmovable. No crossing. No return. No second chance. The gate the rich man kept closed in life had become a divide that could not be crossed in death. The rich man understood the chasm. He understood that nothing could change his own fate now. Regret could not build a bridge. Pain could not open a door. So he turned his plea outward, toward others still living. He begged Abraham to send Lazarus back to his father's house to warn his brothers, so they would not come to the same place of torment. And in that request, we hear something heartbreaking. He finally sees the danger of comfort. He finally understands how a life can look successful and still be empty of mercy. Abraham's answer was clear. They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them. In other words, God has already spoken. The truth has already been placed within reach. The call to love, to justice, to mercy has been written and repeated and preached for generations. But the rich man pushed back. No, they will not listen. But if someone goes to them from the dead, then they will repent. He believed what many still believe, that hearts only change with spectacle. That truth must come with drama. That we need a miracle big enough to force us to become different. Then Abraham said something that should make every soul pause. If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. The problem is not lack of information. The problem is lack of listening. The problem is a heart trained to resist what it already knows is right. A heart that delays mercy. A heart that keeps saying later. This is where the story becomes more than a lesson about the afterlife. It becomes a warning about the present. God has already spoken to you through Scripture. God has already shown you what love looks like. God has already made it clear that faith without compassion is empty. And the story says something else that is sobering. If you refuse to listen now, a miracle later may not change you. Because miracles do not force repentance on a heart that refuses to hear. Even resurrection does not automatically produce surrender. The rich man fell silent. And in that silence, the story turns toward us. Because we are the ones still in time. We are the ones with days still opening. We are the ones with gates still in front of us. We are the ones who can still respond to the voice of God before the chasm becomes fixed. The warning is already here. The word is already here. The invitation is already here. Mercy is not waiting for a perfect moment. Mercy is calling for a willing heart. Today, the story does not change its ending. Lazarus remains comforted. The rich man remains separated. The chasm remains fixed. No scene is rewritten. No rescue arrives. And that is exactly why this parable matters. Because Jesus did not tell it to satisfy curiosity about heaven and hell. He told it to interrupt the way we live while we still have time to choose differently. There is still a gate in our lives. It may not be made of iron and stone, but it is real. It is the door we close gently. It is the boundary we build between our comfort and someone else's pain. It is the habit of staying busy enough to avoid being moved. It is the decision to keep walking when love is calling us to stop. And somewhere near you, there is a Lazarus, not a symbol, not a statistic, a person, a face you have seen, a need you have noticed. It's a story you have heard and pushed away because it felt inconvenient or complicated. Someone close enough to see, yet far enough to ignore. Who is the Lazarus at your gate? Maybe it is the coworker who smiles but is breaking inside. Maybe it is the neighbor whose life is falling apart in quiet ways. Maybe it is the person you pass every morning and tell yourself someone else will help. Maybe it is a family member you have avoided because their pain feels heavy. Maybe it is someone you have the power to lift with one small act, one phone call, one meal, one honest moment of compassion. We often say, "I did not know what to do," or "it was not my place," or "I will help later." Later feels safe. Later feels endless. But the parable whispers a hard truth. Later is not promised. The rich man was not condemned for murder. He was not condemned for a loud scandal. He was condemned for a life that saw suffering and repeatedly chose not to cross the distance toward it. The distance was small. A few steps, a little attention, a little humility, a little mercy, but repeated silence over time shaped the soul. This is why the story presses on us. What comforts have trained you to look away? What routines protect you from seeing what might cost you time, energy, or money? What fears tell you compassion is not your responsibility? God is not asking for grand gestures. God is asking for listening hearts. The call to mercy is still clear. The invitation to love is still open. And the gate can still open wider. So what do we do with this story? We begin where Jesus wants us to begin, not with fear, but with honesty. We ask God to show us the places where we have grown numb. We ask God to reveal the gates we pass through without thinking. We ask God to soften the part of us that learned to protect comfort more than we protect compassion. Because the truth is, the rich man's greatest failure was not that he had much. It was that he lived as if his abundance existed for himself alone. He lived as if Lazarus was someone else's problem. He lived as if mercy could always wait until later. But mercy cannot always wait. The gospel keeps bringing us back to the same reality. Love is not only a feeling. Love is action. Love crosses the distance. Love notices. Love stops. Love gives. Love listens. Love bends down and speaks a name. Love opens the gate. And when we think about the afterlife in this parable, we should not use it to build pride or to point fingers. we should use it to wake up. Because Jesus is not trying to make us obsessed with flames and chasms. Jesus is trying to make us obsessed with mercy while time is still in our hands. You may not be able to change everything, but you can change something. You can start with one act of compassion that is real. You can share food. You can offer help. You can check on someone. You can give a ride. You can pray with someone. You can speak kindness where there was cold distance. You can stop treating pain as background noise. And here's the hope. God does not only warn, God also invites. The story is urgent, but it is not hopeless. Because you are hearing it now, which means you still have time. You still have breath. You still have a chance to open the gate. Thank you for being with us on Pergaminos Abiertos and Open Scrolls. If this message spoke to your heart, subscribe for more Bible stories that challenge, comfort, and strengthen your faith. Share this video with someone who needs it today. And leave a comment below telling us what part of the story touched you the most and how you want God to help you live with more mercy. Your comments help build a community where faith is not only heard, but lived. Until next time, keep your heart awake, keep your eyes open, and keep walking in compassion.